What's up, and welcome to Me, You, and Switch 2. I am me, Tom Tate, and you are you. So let's talk about Switch 2. This is the latest and greatest Nintendo Switch 2 news, brought to you every Tuesday and Friday in snackable episodes. We try to keep things 10 minutes or less, though I'm going to warn you that this episode will be a longer one. Today, the first episode of the month typically is. I'll explain why. So it's Tuesday, March 3rd. I hope that your weekend was great. I finally finished Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on Switch 2. Absolutely love that game. The last act, the last like 3 chapters of that game is really fun for a lot of spoilery ways, or at least I found it fun. It was pretty divisive on the internet. But I did notice that there were a lot of segments that when I played them back in 2020 for the first time, they felt like world building. They felt exciting. They felt fresh. And then when I was playing them for the second, third time, this time around, it definitely felt more like filler. Just, padding, extra padding. And elements that I loved in the first playthrough felt like a slog. But it's still one of my favorite games. I can't recommend it enough if you like Final Fantasy, especially if you like Final Fantasy VII. If you're very nostalgic for Final Fantasy VII and you like turn-based action, it might not be for you. But if you just love this world so much, to be back in it is really awesome. And I can't wait to have an excuse to play Rebirth again in just a couple of months. So there is a surprisingly, there's so much going on right now with Nintendo Switch 2 because we got all the new things on the Pokemon Presents Direct on Friday. I didn't get to cover any of that. Then we got all of the Pokemon Pokopia reviews trickling in over the past couple of days. And then we learned about this Indie Showcase Direct, which will probably have aired by the time you hear this episode. It is 7:52 a.m. on the East Coast, and it is airing at 9 a.m. Eastern. So unless you listen right away, this has already happened. And to add to all of this action, if you are new to this podcast, I typically take the first episode of the calendar month to dive into all of the games that will release, or all of the games that we know are set to release in that month. So here's the plan. Today, this will be that episode. So I'm going to go through every game that we know of coming to Switch 2 in March 2026. And then tomorrow, I'll hop back on with a bit of a bonus episode for the week. I will cover the Pokopia reviews and anything in the Indie Showcase. I think the Indie Showcase is only 15 minutes long, so it shouldn't be that hard to kind of pack all of this into one episode. And then I'll be back on Friday morning with the regularly scheduled programming. So this is going to be a long one. We're already 3 minutes in. But before we get into it, I want to give a quick shout out to Apple Podcast user Mike from Midwest for leaving a really fantastic review. I really appreciate this. He wrote a best short form podcast. Okay, this one really hit me by surprise. I got a Switch 2 a couple of weeks ago and wanted a short form podcast about Nintendo news. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and this is one of my absolute favorites. I'm delighted each time a new episode drops and look forward to it between show days. I work for myself and from home, so I don't need to wake up early, but I find myself setting an alarm for pod days so I can listen as soon as they drop. Wonderful podcast. So I appreciate it, Mike. Reviews like this really keep me going and help me continue to grow the show. I appreciate the kind words. And let's just dive into today's episode. So Scott Pilgrim EX is going to be the first big release. That is today, $28.99. This, of course, is a classic kind of retro style beat 'em up. It is, I guess, a sequel to the Scott Pilgrim game that came out in the late 2000s, before 2010, I think. Join Scott Pilgrim and Ramona Flowers in a brand new brawling adventure across space, time, and the streets of Toronto. Toronto 20XX, the city has been taken over by 3 rival gangs, the Vegans, the Robots, and the Demons. But who's behind this madness? When Scott Pilgrim's bandmates are abducted by shadowy forces, a brand new adventure begins. So that's the official description on the Nintendo page. You get 7 playable characters. You get a soundtrack by Anna Managuchi. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Fantastic chiptune style music. And they do it live. That band is amazing. And they did the soundtrack to the original Scott Pilgrim game, 4-player co-op, locally or online. So if you like the first game, definitely check this out. I'm sure this will drop in price eventually too, if it feels a little too steep. Next, we have Back to the Dawn. This is releasing on March 5th for $34.99. The official kind of blurb here is dive into a gripping CRPG packed with intrigue, chaos, and nonstop action. Back to the Dawn is a story-rich RPG set in a high-security prison ruled by factions and buried secrets. Investigate 2 conspiracies from the inside, gather evidence, and outsmart a system designed to silence you. Make friends or foes with fellow inmates and with their help, break out of prison. So that's the official description from the Nintendo page. But what they don't mention in this paragraph is that all of the characters are anthropomorphic, right? So they're animals. There's dogs. There is cats. It looks like a bear. Like there are all different types of animals in this prison in a pixel art style. So it says choose between 2 protagonists, Thomas, a reporter caught in a web of lies, or Bob, an undercover agent sent deep into the prison system. Each storyline delivers over 20 hours of engrossing mystery where your every choice matters. This game is already out on Steam, it seems. There are a lot of positive reviews on the Steam page, so you might want to check this out if you're into really long CRPGs, and especially if pixel art speaks to you. $34.99 feels steep for what looks like an indie-ish title, but 20 hours of gameplay across 2 different stories, so 40 plus hours of gameplay could be pretty good. Planet of Lana 2, Nintendo Switch 2 edition, releases on March 5th as well for $19.99. This is a self-described cinematic puzzle platformer adventure. The description here, as greed and power divide the tribes of their home planets, Lana and her little companion Mui must stand together against the forces reshaping their world, struggling not just for survival, but for the soul of their home. Very epic paragraph here. It also says that it's a 6 to 8 hour adventure, so self-contained. If you watch videos of this, and I suggest that you do, again, Planet of Lana 2, I watch videos because it's hard to describe the style of this game, but it's giving me a Boy and His Blob vibes, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And I'm talking about the Way Forward remake that occurred in, I think it released in 2009. I think I'm definitely going to wishlist this one. Again, Planet of Lana 2. Next up, of course, though, is Pokemon Pokopia. This is going to release on March 5th as well. This is a $70 title. This is kind of an Animal Crossing or Dragon Quest Builders-like life sim style game. I know I just threw a lot of words at you, but if you play Dragon Quest Builders, you know what I'm talking about. Lots of coverage on this already, and I'll dive into the reviews this week. So let's just keep it at that because this is already a long episode. We'll talk about Pokemon Pokopia probably tomorrow in a bonus episode. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake, March 12th, $49.99. I'm pretty sure we saw this at a partner direct in the past. Here's the official description. The full remake of the second installment in the Fatal Frame series titled Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly. This Japanese-style horror adventure game follows twin sisters who become lost in an abandoned village haunted by vengeful spirits. Using the camera obscura, a device that can capture and seal away the impossible, they fight ghosts as the story unfolds. This title has undergone a complete overhaul with improvements to everything from visuals and audio to the core gameplay systems and controls. The signature camera obscura mechanic, used to capture and fend off spirits, remains a key feature, now offering richer and more engaging gameplay in both exploration and combat. So this game looks super intense. I've never played a Fatal Frame game, and with Resident Evil, this is like a good 1-2 punch if you're into horror games. Next, we have Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. This is coming out on March 13th for $69.99. This is the third entry in the Monster Hunter Stories RPG series. Monster Hunter Stories is an RPG series set in the Monster Hunter world where you can become a rider, raising and bonding with your favorite monsters. This game visually looks fantastic. It has an art style that is giving me kind of strong Tears of the Kingdom vibes. And this is also from Capcom, so we're seeing more and more support from them as a strong third party, really showing up for Switch 2. I've never played any of the Monster Hunter games. I've never played any of the Monster Hunter Stories games. This might be the one that kind of draws me in. So the first Monster Hunter Stories game was 34 and a half hours, and Monster Hunter Stories 2 is estimated at 41 hours, according to HowLongToBeat.com. So these are kind of sprawling RPGs, definitely lengthy, but maybe that helps kind of justify that $69.99 price. After that, we have WWE 2K26 Standard Edition and all the different editions that you can get for this game. This one is $69.99. It will also release on March 13th. You have CM Punk on the cover. The description here: relive iconic eras, rewrite history, and dominate with 400 plus superstars, all new match types, and CM Punk's 2K showcase. So my biggest challenge with WWE games and wrestling games and sports games in general is the price, because I know that this will be $30 or less someday, and probably relatively soon. I haven't played a wrestling game personally since 2009's WWE Legends of WrestleMania back on the Xbox 360. I absolutely adored that game though, but I've been tempted to play every wrestling game ever since, and I just haven't picked one up. I don't know that this is going to be the one that draws me in, but there's a huge market for this, obviously. So if this is you, I hope you're excited for it. If it's not, but you're interested, just wait for that price drop, because it's bound to happen. Snoopy and the Great Mystery Club will drop on March 17th. This is $39.99. This has been available on Switch 1 for quite a bit. It's a kid's game, obviously. Graphically, it definitely captures the Peanuts gang really well. The art style reminds me of the animated films, which I have, watched because I have kids. And the Peanuts movie is actually a pretty good movie. I don't know how fun this looks, though. They do have a kick the football minigame, though, which I love to see. Very Peanuts-esque. Nintendo Switch 2 features include 4K docked 1080p handheld, higher frame rates, improved visual contrast with HDR, enhanced game texture resolutions and lighting effects. Very important for Kick the Football. Dynamic shadows and faster loading times. On March 18th, there are 2 Shadow Tactics games, Blades of the Shogun and Blades of the Shogun Eiko's Choice. I think Eiko's Choice is like a extension or DLC. The first one is $35.99, and then the extension is $17.99. These are tactical stealth games. I don't know much about them. They look like PC games, which would make sense because that's where the series originated, on the PC. According to Wikipedia, it was released on December 6, 2016 for Microsoft Windows, macOS, and Linux. And then July 2017, it hit PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And then eventually it hit Nintendo Switch, or will hit Nintendo Switch on March 18th, 2026. A standalone expansion for the game is titled Eiko's Choice. That was released in 2021. It has 5 missions on new maps, but it adds no new gameplay features. Again, that's according to Wikipedia. So if you're interested in tactics-style stealth games, check this one out. On March 26th, we will finally get our hands on Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition Meetup in Bella Bell Park. This is the enhanced Switch 2 version of Mario Wonder. I talked a lot about this on the podcast in the past. Here's what's enhanced according to the official Nintendo listing. Experience the Flower Kingdom in up to 4K resolution when docked to a compatible TV. Enjoy smoother frame rates and faster load times for a snappier feel. And with Game Share support, you can even let a friend join the fun on their system with just the one game. So again, with Game Share, you purchase once and you can kind of share to another Switch system locally. Meetup at Bella Bell Park introduces new gameplay. Here's what it says. Explore Bella Bell Park, an area newly discovered within the Flower Kingdom with your friends, and play various multiplayer attractions. So the focus here is multiplayer. Take on all 7 of the Koopalings in newly added boss courses scattered throughout the Flower Kingdom. Choose from an even larger cast of characters in this Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game, which now includes Rosalina and co-star Luma, and adds them to the existing cast. Okay, there is some solo stuff. I think there's some challenges that you can do. But this, I didn't realize this, or I did realize this, but it's just coming to light now as I'm reading back. This is an $80 title. So if you already have the Switch 1 version, it's still a $20 upgrade. So if you haven't played this game, it's going to cost you $80. That's the price of admission on Switch 2. Of course, you can always get the $60 edition for Switch 1, which I'm sure will run fine. That's kind of wild to me. This game was really fantastic, but it's an older game now, and I'm not used to older games going up in price. I'm used to older games decreasing in price, but I guess that's always been the Nintendo way to hold the line on their premium title pricing and not really go on sale too often. And then finally, I have to wrap this episode up because we're past 14 minutes, and that's crazy for me, you, and Switch 2. Finally, we have Virtua Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. Virtual Fighter hits Nintendo Switch 2. This is the Pioneer 3D fighting series, and it continues to evolve as Virtual Fighter 5 Revo World Stage arrives on Nintendo Switch 2. There's a new solo mode. There's crossplay. Just a classic fighting game if you're into Virtual Fighter. Pretty exciting that this is arriving on Switch. I'm pretty sure this is cheap too, $19.99, and I didn't write down the release date, but it's at the end of the month, so I'll cover it later. All right, that's it. I have to wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for your time and your attention. Be sure to subscribe on your podcast listening app of choice. Much love. I'll be back tomorrow with a bonus episode. Much love. Now go play some games.